Good morning, everyone. We hear the term all the time, love yourself. It's written on billboards, repeated in self-help books, posted on social media. But what does it really mean? What does it actually look like to love yourself? Because if we're being honest, self-love sounds great in theory, but in practice, it feels complicated. See, we live in a world that constantly tells us what we should be. We should be more successful, more attractive, more productive, more disciplined. We should be happier, stronger, wealthier. And when we fall short of those expectations, we begin to believe that we are not enough, that we are somehow unworthy of love, especially our own. But here's the problem. If our love for ourselves is conditional, if it depends on achievements, appearance, or the approval of others, then we are not practicing self-love. We are practicing self-judgment. We are placing our worth in things that are fragile, temporary, and outside of our control. And when those things change, when we fail, when we struggle, our sense of self crumbles with them. Self-love is not about being perfect. It is not about reaching a certain level of success or living up to an unrealistic standard. Self-love is about accepting who you are, as you are, and recognizing that you are worthy, not because of what you've done, but simply because you exist. It is about showing yourself the same kindness, compassion, and patience that you would offer to someone you deeply care about. Think about the people you love the most, your best friend, your partner, your child. If they make a mistake, do you shame them? If they fail, do you stop loving them? Of course not. You encourage them, support them, remind them of their worth. So why do we struggle to do the same for ourselves? Why do we hold ourselves to a different standard, one that demands perfection and punishes anything less? Somewhere along the way, we learn to treat ourselves with criticism instead of care. We internalize the belief that love must be earned, that we have to prove our value before we deserve kindness. But the truth is, self-love is not a reward. It is not something we have to work for or chase. It is something we decide. Self-love is not arrogance. It is not selfishness. It is not about thinking we are better than anyone else. It is about knowing that we are just as worthy as everyone else. It is about standing in front of the mirror, seeing our flaws, our scars, our imperfections, and saying, I am enough. Not, I will be enough when I lose weight. Not, I will be enough when I get the promotion. Not, I will be enough when someone else loves me. Just, I am enough. And this is important because the way we love ourselves determines how we show up in the world. When we lack self-love, we settle for less than we deserve. We tolerate unhealthy relationships. We accept toxic environments. We silence our own voices. But when we truly love ourselves, we raise our standards. We surround ourselves with people who respect us. We choose opportunities that align with our values. We set boundaries that protect our well-being. Self-love is not just a feeling. It is a practice. It is the way we talk to ourselves, the way we take care of our bodies, the way we give ourselves grace when we fail. It is found in the small decisions we make every day, the decision to rest instead of overwork, the decision to walk away from what harms us, the decision to believe in our own potential even when others don't. The most powerful thing about self-love is that it does not rely on anyone else. It is not something that can be given to us or taken away. It is something we build from within. And when we do, we stop looking for validation in the wrong places. We stop chasing approval that doesn't matter. We stop waiting for someone else to tell us that we are worthy because we already know. So love yourself. Not because you are perfect, but because you are human. Love yourself through the highs and the lows, through the successes and the failures, through the moments when it feels easy and the moments when it feels impossible. Because when you do, you will show up in the world with a strength, a confidence, and a kindness that cannot be shaken. And that kind of love, the kind that starts from within, is the kind that changes everything. Self-love is not something we achieve only after meeting certain expectations. It is not a reward for success, beauty, or approval. It is not something we give ourselves only when we feel like we deserve it. It is a decision, one that we must make every single day, regardless of circumstances, regardless of outcomes, regardless of whether we feel worthy or not. Too often we place conditions on our self-worth. We tell ourselves that we will love who we are when we lose weight, when we get the promotion, when we find the right relationship. We convince ourselves that we will finally be deserving of kindness and acceptance once we reach a certain level of success. But the problem with this mindset is that the finish line keeps moving. No matter what we achieve, there will always be another milestone, another goal, another reason to believe we are still not enough. This is why self-love cannot be based on achievements. If we only allow ourselves to feel worthy when we succeed, then what happens when we fail? If we only give ourselves kindness when we feel attractive, then what happens on the days we don't? If we only accept ourselves when others approve of us, then we give away our power to people who may never fully understand our worth. Self-love is not something to be earned. It is something we decide. It is waking up in the morning and choosing to speak to ourselves with kindness, even when we don't feel like it. It is deciding to show ourselves patience when we make mistakes instead of immediately jumping to self-criticism. It is looking in the mirror and choosing to see a person who is worthy of respect and care, regardless of what society tells us we should be. When we make self-love conditional, we turn it into something fragile. We make it dependent on things that are constantly changing, our appearance, our achievements, our level of success. And because these things are never permanent, our sense of worth becomes unstable. One bad day, one rejection, one failure, and suddenly we feel unworthy again. But when we recognize that self-love is a choice, we take back control. We decide that no external factor, no mistake, no opinion from others will determine how much we value ourselves. This does not mean that self-love is easy. It is not always natural to speak to ourselves with kindness. Many of us have spent years being our own worst critic, measuring our worth by impossible standards, believing that we are only as good as what we accomplish. Changing this mindset requires effort. It requires unlearning the belief that we must earn our worth. It requires catching ourselves when we fall into self-judgment and choosing to respond differently. One of the biggest obstacles to self-love is the belief that we must be perfect to deserve it. We think that if we accept ourselves as we are, it means we are giving up on improvement. But self-love and growth are not opposites. In fact, true growth begins with self-love. When we accept who we are, we create a foundation for real change. We stop punishing ourselves for not being perfect, and instead, we learn and evolve from a place of self-respect. There is a difference between self-love and complacency. Loving yourself does not mean ignoring your flaws or refusing to improve. It means recognizing that you are already enough, even as you work to become better. It means knowing that your worth is not defined by your progress. It means understanding that you can love yourself today while still striving for a better tomorrow. Self-love is also not about comparing ourselves to others. In a world where social media constantly showcases people at their best, it is easy to fall into the trap of believing that we are not good enough. We see others who seem happier, more successful, more attractive, and we start to believe that we are failing. But self-love is about appreciating our own journey, not measuring it against someone else's highlight reel. It is about recognizing that our path is unique, that our progress does not have to look like anyone else's, and that we are not in competition with anyone. It is also important to remember that self-love is not selfish. Many of us have been taught that putting ourselves first is wrong, that prioritizing our own well-being makes us arrogant or self-centered. But self-love is not about ignoring the needs of others. It is about making sure that we are not neglecting our own. When we take care of ourselves, we show up better for the people around us. When we treat ourselves with kindness, we have more kindness to give. When we respect ourselves, we teach others how to respect us in return. Self-love is a decision, but it is also a practice. It is something we must choose again and again, even on the days when it feels difficult. It is choosing to forgive ourselves when we make mistakes, rather than holding on to guilt. It is choosing to rest when we need it, rather than forcing ourselves to keep going out of fear of being seen as weak. It is choosing to set boundaries with people who drain us, rather than allowing ourselves to be treated in ways that diminish our self-worth. It is not always easy, but it is always worth it. When we learn to love ourselves without conditions, We free ourselves from the endless cycle of seeking external validation. We stop waiting for permission to feel good enough. We take ownership of our own worth. And in doing so, we build a kind of confidence, strength, and resilience that no one can take away from us. The way we talk to ourselves shapes our reality. The words we use, the tone we take, the beliefs we repeat in our minds, all of these things become the foundation of how we see ourselves, how we carry ourselves, and ultimately how we live our lives. We often think that our circumstances, our past, or the opinions of others determine our self-worth. But more often than not, it is our own internal dialogue that defines how we feel about who we are. Imagine if a close friend came to you and admitted they were struggling, that they made a mistake, that they were feeling lost. Would you criticize them? Would you call them a failure? Would you list all the reasons why they aren't good enough? Well, of course not. You would encourage them, you would remind them of their strengths, you would help them see that this moment does not define them. But when it comes to ourselves, we often do the opposite. We speak to ourselves in ways we would never speak to someone we love. We magnify our flaws, we replay our failures, we tell ourselves we are not enough. And over time, these words become our truth. Self-talk is not just an occasional thought, it is an ongoing dialogue. It happens every day. The brain does not distinguish between the words we say and the reality we create. If we tell ourselves that we are failures, we start to see evidence of failure everywhere. If we tell ourselves that we are unworthy of love, we begin to interpret every rejection, every setback as proof that we were right all along. But the opposite is also true. If we change the way we speak to ourselves, if we choose words that empower rather than diminish, we begin to see different results. We start to recognize our strengths. We start to believe in our ability to grow, to improve, to overcome. This does not mean ignoring our mistakes or pretending that challenges do not exist. It does not mean forcing toxic positivity or denying difficult emotions. But there is a difference between acknowledging our struggles and defining ourselves by them. There is a difference between saying, "I failed," and saying, "I am a failure." One describes an event, the other assigns it as part of our identity. One allows room for learning and growth. The other traps us in a cycle of self-doubt. The words we use matter, not just in how we speak to others, but in how we speak to ourselves. Every time we catch ourselves thinking, "I'm not good enough," we have a choice. We can continue reinforcing that belief, or we can challenge it. We can remind ourselves that worth is not based on perfection. We can replace self-criticism with self-compassion. We can choose words that reflect the truth of who we are, not the fears that hold us back. Our self-talk is often shaped by years of conditioning. Many of us grew up in environments where we were told we had to be a certain way to be accepted. Maybe we were compared to others, made to feel that our best was never enough. Maybe we internalized criticism from teachers, parents, or peers. Maybe we failed once and convinced ourselves that we would always fail. These thoughts don't just disappear overnight. Changing the way we talk to ourselves requires awareness and practice. It starts with paying attention, listening to the thoughts that run through our minds, questioning whether they are helping us or harming us. If we wouldn't say it to a friend, why do we say it to ourselves? If we wouldn't let someone else speak to us with cruelty, why do we allow it from our own inner voice? We can rewire the way we think, but it requires intentional effort. It means replacing self-doubt with self-encouragement, replacing harsh words with words that inspire growth. Instead of saying, "I'll never get this right," we can say, "I'm learning and I will improve." Instead of saying, "I always mess things up," we can say, "I am working through challenges, and that's okay." It is not about ignoring reality, but about choosing to see ourselves with the same kindness and grace that we extend to others. Confidence is not something we are born with, it is something we build. And it begins with the way we speak to ourselves. No one else will hear the conversations we have in our own minds, but those conversations shape everything. They shape how we show up, how we pursue our goals, how we respond to failure. The strongest people are not those who never have doubt, but those who refuse to let their doubts define them. They speak to themselves in a way that lifts them up rather than tears them down. They choose words that strengthen rather than weaken. It is not enough to rely on others for encouragement. Compliments from others may feel good in the moment, but if we do not believe in ourselves, they will not stick. True confidence comes from within. It comes from consistently reinforcing the belief that we are capable, that we are worthy, that we are enough. The world will always have opinions, but the most important voice we will ever hear is our own. The way we talk to ourselves is a habit, and like any habit, it can be changed. The words we choose today will shape who we become tomorrow. If we want to build a life of courage, of confidence, of resilience, it starts with the way we speak to ourselves. It starts with choosing words that build rather than break, words that encourage rather than discourage, words that remind us that we are stronger than we think. The way we love ourselves sets the standard for how others treat us. The way we carry ourselves, the way we speak about ourselves, and the way we allow ourselves to be treated all send a message to the people around us. If we respect ourselves, others will respect us. If we undervalue ourselves, others will follow suit. Many of us have been in situations where we accepted less than we deserved. Maybe we stayed in relationships that drained us, tolerated friendships that made us feel small, or worked in environments where we were not appreciated. And often, we wonder why people treat us the way they do, but the truth is, people take cues from us. If we don't believe we are worthy of kindness, love, and respect, we unintentionally communicate that to others. If we constantly put ourselves last, people will assume that is where we belong. This is not about blaming ourselves for the way others behave. It is about recognizing that we have power over the standards we set. When we practice self-love, we create a boundary between what we accept and what we don't. We stop justifying mistreatment. We stop making excuses for people who do not respect us. We stop trying to prove our worth to those who fail to see it. Many of us struggle with setting boundaries because we fear rejection. We worry that if we say no, if we demand better, if we walk away from toxic situations, we will lose people. But here's the thing. Anyone who leaves because you respect yourself was never meant to stay. The people who genuinely care about you will not be threatened by your self-worth. They will not ask you to shrink to make them comfortable. They will not demand that you tolerate less than you deserve. Loving yourself means knowing your own value even when others don't. It means recognizing that your worth is not defined by how much you give to others at the expense of yourself. It means understanding that you do not have to earn kindness, respect, or love. They are the bare minimum of what you deserve. Sometimes we get so used to unhealthy treatment that we begin to normalize it. We tell ourselves that this is just how relationships are, that this is what we have to accept. We convince ourselves that standing up for ourselves is selfish, that asking for respect is too much, but it is not. Respect is not something that should be negotiable. Love should not come with conditions that require you to diminish yourself. One of the hardest lessons in self-love is learning that not everyone will meet the standards you set. There will be people who expect you to tolerate less, to compromise your needs, to accept whatever they are willing to give. And when you refuse, some will leave, some will resist, some will try to make you feel guilty for valuing yourself. But that discomfort, that loss, is not a sign that you are doing something wrong. It is a sign that you are growing. People who truly belong in your life will not feel threatened by your self-respect. They will not take advantage of your kindness. They will not expect you to lower your standards to accommodate their lack of effort. And when you truly love yourself, you will not entertain relationships that require you to prove your worth over and over again. You will not chase those who treat you as an option. You will not waste energy trying to convince people to see your value. This does not mean we cut off everyone at the first sign of imperfection. It does not mean we stop giving grace or compassion to others. It means that we understand the difference between imperfection and consistent mistreatment. It means that we learn to recognize when a relationship is adding to our lives and when it is only taking from us. It also means taking responsibility for the way we treat ourselves. If we constantly criticize ourselves, if we engage in negative self-talk, if we refuse to acknowledge our own worth, we invite others to do the same. If we do not believe we deserve love and respect, it will be difficult to convince anyone else to treat us with those things. The way we love ourselves creates a ripple effect. It teaches others how to love us. It defines what we are willing to accept. It influences the energy we attract into our lives. When we love ourselves fully, we stop settling. We stop making excuses for bad behavior. We stop feeling guilty for prioritizing our well-being. We start showing up differently. We speak with more confidence. We set boundaries without apology. We walk away from what no longer serves us. The right people will celebrate your self-worth, they will respect your boundaries, they will recognize your value without needing to be convinced. The more you love yourself, the clearer it becomes who deserves to be in your life. The more you honor yourself, the more you will attract those who honor you too. Loving yourself means embracing imperfection. We live in a world that constantly tells us we need to be more successful, more attractive, more accomplished, more everything. We are conditioned to believe that if we are not perfect, we are not enough. And so we spend our lives chasing an impossible standard, believing that once we reach it, we will finally be worthy of love and happiness. But the truth is, perfection, it is a moving target that we will never catch. And the more we chase it, the further we drift from self-acceptance. We are not meant to be perfect. We are meant to be real. We are meant to have flaws, to make mistakes, to grow through experiences that challenge us. The beauty of being human is not in our ability to be flawless, but in our ability to evolve, to learn, and to keep going, even when things don't go as planned. Yet so many of us struggle to accept this. We hold ourselves to impossible standards, and when we fall short, we convince ourselves that we are not enough. We criticize ourselves for every mistake, compare ourselves to those who seem to have it all together, and refuse to acknowledge our worth until we feel we have become good enough. But what does good enough even mean? Who decides when we have reached it? If we are constantly waiting for perfection before we allow ourselves to love who we are, we will be waiting forever. True self-love is not found in reaching an ideal. It is found in accepting ourselves exactly as we are, flaws and all. It is understanding that we can still strive for growth while embracing the fact that we will never be without imperfections. It is recognizing that our worth is not based on how perfect we appear, but on the way we show up for ourselves, even when we feel far from perfect. When we embrace imperfection, we free ourselves from the weight of unrealistic expectations. We stop measuring our value by external achievements. We stop believing that we need to prove ourselves to be deserving of love. We start to see mistakes not as evidence of failure, but as opportunities for growth. We start to recognize that our struggles, our scars, and our imperfections are what make us beautifully human. So many of us fear imperfection because we believe it makes us unworthy. We hide our flaws, afraid that if people see the real us, they will not accept us. But the truth is, real connection happens in imperfection. We do not bond with people because they are flawless. We bond with them because they are real, because they are honest, because they are willing to be vulnerable. When we allow ourselves to be seen as we truly are, without the need to be perfect, we open the door to genuine relationships and authentic self-acceptance. Embracing imperfection also means letting go of comparison. In a world where we are constantly exposed to curated highlights of other people's lives, it is easy to feel like we are not measuring up. We see people who seem happier, more successful, more confident, and we assume that they have figured something out that we have not. But what we don't see are their struggles, their insecurities, their behind-the-scenes moments of doubt and failure. No one has it all together. No one is without flaws. And the more we compare ourselves to an illusion of perfection, the more we rob ourselves of the ability to appreciate our own journey. Loving yourself means giving yourself permission to be imperfect. It means accepting that you will make mistakes, that you will have days where you struggle, that you will sometimes feel lost. It means understanding that your worth is not conditional on how flawless you appear, but on the way you choose to show up for yourself despite your imperfections. It means forgiving yourself for the times you fell short, for the things you wish you had done differently, for the ways you have been hard on yourself. It also means embracing the parts of yourself that you have been taught to see as flaws. Maybe you have been told that you are too emotional, too sensitive, too much. Maybe you have been made to feel that your quirks, your unique qualities, your differences are things to be ashamed of. But these are the things that make you who you are. They are not imperfections. They are the things that set you apart. The moment you stop apologizing for being exactly who you are is the moment you step into true self-love. Growth is a lifelong journey, and there will always be room for improvement. But loving yourself does not mean waiting until you have reached some imaginary finish line. It means deciding that you are enough right now, in this moment, as you are. It means being kind to yourself even when you feel like you are not doing enough. It means speaking to yourself with the same compassion you would give to a friend. It means recognizing that imperfection is not something to be ashamed of. It is what makes you beautifully, unapologetically human. Self-love is not just about feeling good about yourself. It is about taking action to care for yourself even when it is difficult. It is about making choices that honor your well-being, setting boundaries that protect your peace, and refusing to abandon yourself for the sake of pleasing others. Too often, we think of self-love as something soft, something passive, something that happens when we finally feel worthy enough. But real self-love is active. It requires discipline. It requires making decisions that serve us, even when they are not the easiest choices to make. Taking care of yourself means recognizing when you are exhausted and allowing yourself to rest rather than pushing through just to meet an expectation. It means nourishing your body with food that fuels you rather than punishing yourself with unrealistic diets. It means moving your body in ways that feel good, not because you hate how you look, but because you respect what your body does for you every day. It means making your mental health a priority, even when the world tells you that productivity matters more than peace. Loving yourself also means protecting your energy. It is about being mindful of who and what you allow into your life. It means recognizing when certain relationships drain you instead of uplifting you, when certain environments make you feel small instead of empowered, when certain habits pull you away from the person you want to be rather than bringing you closer to yourself. It means setting boundaries without guilt, understanding that your peace is worth protecting. Many of us struggle with this because we have been conditioned to believe that putting ourselves first is selfish. We have been taught that self-sacrifice is a virtue, that we should always put the needs of others before our own. But the truth is, you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you constantly give without replenishing yourself, you will burn out. You will become resentful. You will lose yourself in the process of trying to be everything for everyone else. And when that happens, you are not able to show up fully for the people who matter most. Real self-love is not about neglecting others. It is about ensuring that you are whole so that you can show up in the world as your best self. It is about understanding that you matter too. Your needs, your dreams, your well-being are just as important as anyone else's. And the more you take care of yourself, the more you have to give to the people around you. Sometimes taking care of yourself means making difficult choices. It means walking away from relationships that no longer serve you. It means saying no to things that drain your energy, even when you feel pressured to say yes. It means holding yourself accountable for your own happiness rather than expecting someone else to fulfill you. It means taking responsibility for your healing rather than waiting for circumstances to change or for others to make things right. Healing is an act of self-love. It is choosing to work through your pain instead of burying it. It is facing the parts of yourself that you have avoided for years. It is learning to forgive yourself for past mistakes rather than punishing yourself indefinitely. It is allowing yourself to feel, even when those emotions are uncomfortable. It is unlearning the patterns that no longer serve you, breaking cycles that have kept you stuck, and rewriting the stories you have told yourself about who you are and what you deserve. Self-love is also about the way you speak to yourself. It is about catching the negative thoughts before they spiral. It is about choosing to replace self-criticism with self-compassion. It is about acknowledging your progress even when you feel like you still have a long way to go. The words you say to yourself matter. The way you think about yourself shapes how you move through the world. If you constantly tell yourself that you are not good enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough, you will begin to believe it. But when you start to speak to yourself with kindness, when you remind yourself of your strengths instead of fixating on your flaws, you begin to change the way you see yourself. Loving yourself is also about giving yourself permission to be human. It is about recognizing that you will have bad days, that you will make mistakes, that you will sometimes struggle. It is about understanding that you are not meant to have it all figured out, that growth is not linear, that healing takes time, It is about allowing yourself to exist as you are, without constantly feeling the need to prove your worth. This is not something that happens overnight. It is a daily practice. Some days will be easier than others. Some days you will feel confident, and other days you will struggle with doubt. But self-love is not about perfection. It is about commitment. It is about choosing to show up for yourself, even on the days when it feels hardest. It is about recognizing that you deserve your own love, your own care, your own kindness, not just when you are at your best, but always.